Hey everyone, a bit of a different video for you today because normally we talk about things that are really only an issue within the League of Legends esports sphere, but I think that this topic that I'm going to be discussing is relevant to all of Riot Esports, or at least the way that Riot Esports itself functions. And it's pretty much a conclusion I came to after combining the stuff that happened in the League of Legends space earlier this summer with the LCS, as well as some stuff that's happened in Valorant this week. And before you click away because you're like, Valorant, blah, I want to be clear that I'm going to explain why it's very important for League fans to understand this. And I'm going to use it within League terms and League context so you'll understand by the end of it what's going on. But before we do that, I just want to shout out Alienware for sponsoring this video. Stick around at the end of the video as we talk more about them. So one of the things that we have talked about a lot over the years on this channel is Riot's founding value, or one of them, which is player experience first, right? You hear players first, that's like one of their big things. And anytime I bring this up, I know there's a ton of people that are like, well, it's not really players first because they nerfed my champion. Or, oh, like the skin costs too much. So really they're not players first. Okay, whatever. I can't level with you folks on something like that because people have different opinions on this. But I think if you look at the way that they talk to their audience, if you look at a lot of the decisions that they make, a lot of the areas that they willingly lose money, it is very different than the way a lot of other companies operate in the space, especially long-standing ones. I think that was one of the reasons why they founded the company, and the way that they looked at it was just, hey, a lot of gaming companies really take advantage of their players or just put stuff out there and players have to consume it or take it or leave it, and that's it. Riot is usually pretty good about that. And so whenever I think they fail on that, it's incredibly obvious, right? Because it stands in such strong contrast to the times in which they succeed. So let's look at something that Riot Esports has done recently, which is a little different than the rest of Riot. And I think Riot Esports, by the way, struggles to uphold this value the most because of, I don't know, competitive integrity, constraints, and budgets and timelines and all that stuff that the rest of the company doesn't always have to deal with. But this past week, something very interesting happened to Valorant. Give me 60 seconds. I'm going to try to explain it to you in terms the League of Legends people who watch this channel most often can understand. So imagine if Riot at the beginning of this year had announced that there was going to be an 11th slot opening up in the LCS and that a team could promote into it from the NACL. As many of you know, Disguised Toast was the team, Disguised, I guess, was the team that ran through NACL this year, did the best, and ended up winning just a couple of weeks ago. That team had Zeyzal on it and was coached by Golden Glue and a bunch of really popular individuals, people that people have known for a long time. So Disguised Toast qualifies in. Everyone's really excited because Zeyzal's returning. He gives me that great quote that he gave me in the Ignore interview. Golden Glue coached this team in, and everybody's excited for Disguised Toast to have his team enter into the league as Disguised in 2024. And then randomly, a couple months later, on a Monday, Riot just drops on Twitter that Disguised failed to fill out paperwork and agree to terms that had previously been known for a while, and so the team would not be in the LCS. There would only be 10 teams next year, and they were not going to be doing anything for the players who had won. And then you start to see Zeyzal tweet like, what? What just happened? I just woke up and discovered this, and it's pretty clear all of a sudden that nobody really knew what was going on this whole time, at least on the player side and the coach side. And I know that there's going to be some people who follow the Valorant stuff and they say, well, actually, it's a little more complicated than that. I know. I'll put this statement up on screen right now from Riot, their initial statement. You can pause and read it. And then here's the other statement that Leo, who is like the Nas of Valorant, he put out today. You can pause and read that if you want some additional context on how this stuff went out. But in addition to that, I will also share here the post that the Valorant Players Association put out to give a little context on how they and the players seemingly felt very blindsided by this decision. And you can pause and read that. Either way, does this sound familiar to you? I mean, not obviously the whole thing with the guard and the team not making it in, but in terms of players being blindsided, not knowing what's going on, and just feeling generally disregarded. Well, if it does, it's because it probably is a little similar to the stuff that happened with the NACL that led to a player walkout at the start of the summer, a condensed schedule that Riot has decided to blame for a lot of their viewership issues, which I'm not sure about that. But I just want to compare the similarities here. These are both situations where complications between Riot's relationship with an org led to players losing their jobs overnight. It impacted the prospects of regional talent in a huge way. They didn't work with the PA at all to really soften the blow and refused to have any of those conversations. And players found out suddenly, without really any notice, that they were not going to be having a job after planning to have this job. They don't have a way to, decide maybe they're going to go to college or whatever. It's just a lot of people who just kind of get screwed over on this. And guess what? A lot of them are players. Like, I'm not trying to say that the Guard doesn't suck, because I think that they seemingly have a lot of culpability in all of this. But I've decided to do something which Riot doesn't want to do, I guess, and focus on the impacts of the players in all of this. I kind of want to go back, and I'm going to put on my old man esports hat here and talk about 2013 League of Legends. You see, back in 2013, there was an individual named Bridget Davidson who built and ran a team called Player Management for League of Legends Esports. And one of the first times I remember meeting Bridget, it was her and a woman named Erica running back and forth to get Skara water because he was constantly getting thirsty while competing at MLG Providence in 2011. Yeah, that's how old I am. Anyway, when the LCS started in 2013, Riot realized, hey, these teams don't really have any infrastructure to make sure that players are taken care of and supported. They weren't doing any media training, etc. So Riot built out this team to make sure that players were finding success. And over time, things went and changed. Full disclosure, Bridget now works at Loaded, which is the management group that represents me, but I don't really interact with her much these days. But I should disclose that. She's not at Riot anymore. Anyway, as agents became a thing and players got representation and teams leveled up and became more serious companies, Riot, I think, really pushed down the player management team, and less people working there. And I think now a lot of those folks who are really great, but oftentimes their role is more to just coordinate players at the studio and interface with the teams a little bit. Again, they do important things. It is not at the level that it was a decade ago when this all happened. And I think one of the biggest unfortunate side effects of that is that I don't personally think there are people in the leadership on Riot Esports who are player advocates. I don't think they think about how is this going to impact the players. I think people can do that in terms of we want to make sure these events are okay and they have what they need. But I don't think whenever you get to this level where, hey, we're going to axe a huge part of the NACL, or we are going to just overnight kill this team being a part of VCT in 2024, there's not somebody who's sitting there and thinking about the players. And this, I think, leads to a situation where Riot comes across making all these decisions in a very callous corporate manner than in having any kind of empathy, right? How can you say that you are a company that puts player experience first, players first, when your most hardcore, dedicated players who spend and commit their entire lives, oftentimes sacrificing educational experiences, relationships, all sorts of things in order to try to get a chance to play on the big stage at an international event for your tournaments? How can you treat them so poorly where they find out about this stuff overnight and where you just sort of say, we think it could set a precedent, or there'd be a business issue, so we're not going to do that. No, I think in 2013 that there'd be people internally who would say, hey, we can't fuck over these players. That's just not an option. And that would, spark the conversation, move it into a direction that it just doesn't these days. And you see that time and time again. So what does this mean? Well, look, I think Riot needs to fix this. At least I personally would prefer that they do. And if they don't, then I actually kind of have an interesting suggestion here, which is, and many people don't know this, but recently in the last couple of years, Riot split up parts of their company. Sort of similar to, if you're familiar, how Alphabet owns Google. I don't know the exact situation because Riot hasn't always been completely transparent about it, didn't do much coverage around it, but basically Riot Esports is its own company. And if they feel they can no longer meet the values that Riot Games has, then I think they should change the name of Riot Esports to a different name. And I've looked it up, and it would cost them 13 RP or 13,900 blue essence in order to do this. So it's not that expensive. But yeah, I mean, I think call it something else. Truly make this a different company so that people don't have the same expectations that they put on the rest of Riot in terms of how they're going to behave and how they're going to treat people, because clearly they aren't able to do this. And I think the irony is that this is going to have, even though they seemingly are making a lot of these decisions out of business interests and managing partnerships, I think this is going to have a really shitty impact on their ability to get partners and the people that they want to have in the league, or leagues, I guess, in this situation. And I'll give you an example. I think we have moved past the days where we can look at big traditional sports owners and think, hey, they're the people we want to come into this league. Because I think we have seen how those orgs have not really flourished for the most part. And you've seen, for instance, MSG selling to NRG. Obviously, Andy Miller has sports ties, but that is more an org that is, I think, esports focused than the type of traditional sports orgs that have come in previously. And the bigger thing is to look at orgs like Disguised Toast, look at Moist Esports, what Ludwig and Charlie are doing, and everybody always talking about how Mr. Beast coming in could be huge. Well, guess what? Unlike these big traditional sports people who would look at these decisions and be like, well, that makes sense. You have to just make these kind of cutthroat decisions. These new influencer-led organizations who I think actually do fucking care about your game and demonstrate that in the ways that they are just willing to lose money and they don't have the aspirations of flipping this one day for $500 million. How these people continue to come into your sport and try to do things like what Disguised Toast is doing. But if you look online, you see situations where, for instance, Toast is tweeting at Leo, the head of Valorant, to try to have some sort of better accommodations made for these players. You see situations where Charlie, Moist Critical, is doing videos covering, with quite frankly a sense of outrage, the way that the Riot handled the Players Association situation. You see Ludwig covering that and this VCT thing. And I can even think back to last year where Mr. Beast was involved with that event that Bjergsen was not allowed to participate in because of Riot's rule set and the way that they would rather handle something from a place of sort of corporate decision making rather than what is right by a player or by the fans. And you saw he tweeted his disappointment. So these people are going to care less about how corporate minded and how callous and how much you're going to be able to get your bottom line into the right place for them. And they're going to care more about how are you handling the players? Are you a cool company? Are you a brand that they want to be associated with that they're willing to lose millions of dollars on? And when you do stuff like this, I think you are actually damaging the potential for these people to come in and care, because when they see how you're treating their players and the players in this ecosystem, they're going to be far less interested in partnering with you. And I think that is actually the thing that you should be more concerned about from a company and corporate perspective. Anyway, hopefully Riot changes this and gets better, because I really just think it's been a worrying trend to create, quote, a great man. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. We'll see what Riot does next. Catch you later. You know, between LCS Finals, Worlds, TFT Championships, all these Magic events I am going to be on the road a lot this fall and winter, which sounds great until you look at the amazing lineup of video games that are also coming out this fall and winter. But it is great because Alienware is supporting TGI content and my gaming with an M18, their most powerful laptop. It has an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 40 series GPU, which allows me to play the latest games with amazing visuals for fully immersive gameplay no matter where I am. Grab yours through alienware.com/Travis and support our content.